All right. Good morning, Chair Postman, board members, Garrett and Vollendorf, staff and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Great, thanks, Justin. Good morning, everybody. We'll convene the Liquor and Cannabis Board Caucus meeting for January 24th, 2023. We just have one item on the agenda, which is board member and executive assistant reports. So we just have an opportunity to catch up on a couple of things. And I will look to member Vollendorf first. Do you have something you want to bring up today?
Yeah, I did have one item.
Great.
Can you, oh, yeah, you guys can hear me good?
Yeah. You hear us okay?
Yeah, I have a little bit of echo on my end.
Yeah, there's a weird buzzing. We're in a different room today, everybody. That's the problem here. We're trying a new system, but let's see if it goes away.
I'll try to make it work. Hey, so my quick question or conversation that I wanted to have was related to the legislative session. And because this is my first legislative session with the LCB, the feedback's a little
okay.
difficult
to. I wonder if, I'm going to turn my mic off, see if that helps maybe.
Okay, maybe that's still there.
No, I turned it off now. How is it?
Let me see. Yeah, that's still there.
Yep.
Should I just power through?
No, hold on one sec. Justin and Ray are clicking on some stuff. Yeah, your voice is coming through real buzzy and robot-like.
Dustin, what if we muted the room so it's not coming through twice?
Is the same thing happening when I talk?
Try it again, Jim.
Okay, is that better? It's better on my end.
Now we can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Oh.
There was no echo.
No, it was good. It was good.
If we do this,
Well, at least we know to be ready for tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep.
So when I talk, you're not hearing the echo. Is it just when Jim is speaking?
Yeah.
I can hear it. I can hear it when you're talking, Ollie, the echo.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't hear an echo when you're talking, Ollie, but it is robot-y. It's all compressed and buzzy.
Oh, well.
So there's something going
I
on.
was just talking about your position because I'm
Let's just
hiring.
stand at ease for a moment here and see if we can tune this up.
So that's a permit, has a permanent place in my division. But I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Like how do I
All right, Jim, try again.
into the job description. So
Okay, it's better on my end right now. Can you hear me?
It's a little better, I think,
A
here.
little bit better. We turned the sound down just a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little hard to hear.
I don't have the echo on this side. I don't know if I sound robot-y, but I don't have the echo on my side.
We still got a weird buzzy, but it's not bad. I think we can make this work if others in the room withhold their conversations. Maybe I can hear you. So why don't you go ahead again?
Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, so I've been through a lot of legislative sessions in my career, mostly with King County. And whenever we've put forward legislation, or anytime we've testified about a bill, there was a process that we had in place. And I just wanted to clarify the LCB and how do we make sure and demonstrate whether we are in favor of a bill or when we put agency request legislation forward, what does that process look like? I had question about that, and I was going about it by way that I had history with King County in terms of the agency request legislation and how we demonstrate support. So anyway, I wanted to have a conversation so we were all on the same page about that.
Great. Yeah, well, I think we'll probably need some more with Mark Webster, our ledge person, and when Rick's back, we could all talk about it. But let me, from my position, sort of in the building, how in general how this has been handled in my extensive 2 years. One, the agency request legislation, and as you know, we have 3 this year. Those all did come to us. So I think that process of deciding what is an agency request legislation is pretty pretty well understood in terms of the board signs off on that at some point in that process and are hopefully briefed on it through the process as well.
So David,
And then though,
David?
it gets complicated very quickly, even before the session starts, when conversations start about amending legislation, because as we all know, nothing goes through untouched. Certainly, in my experience, things of substance don't go through. So what do we do then? That is not as well defined about what that process is. I think that we, and frankly, for the last 3 sessions, this would be on me more, but I would say I have told staff, understanding the process, that there's lots of little things they face day to day that it's just not practical for them to come and consult with the 3 of us, sometimes not even with Rick, right? And that to me is the one of the skills and the talents of a good ledge person, and I've got 100% faith in Mark to understand that is what's consequential enough to ask for review, or as somebody used to say, you want other people to touch the hand grenade. You don't want to be making decisions that then blow up something that's on your own. So I think we put a lot of trust in our ledge person, and Justin as the ledge person supervisor, and Rick, who is experienced too. That I would hope they now know where those levels are and what our where our lines are. And some of that is a process thing. I would say, like, if it's a substantive change, we should talk about it. But some of it also is an avenue of interest. So we all know that Ollie leads our social equity conversations. She should be at the forefront of any conversations around that bill. You and I have different areas of expertise or interest, so maybe they're not touching base with all 3 of us, but hopefully they're talking with one of us about the thing. So it's kind of, I guess, but great time to talk about it, because we're facing this question, particularly with that social equity bill.
Yeah,
it's a big bill. It's controversial, more so than it should be. Our sponsors are suggesting changes to it themselves, which is their right. And that's the other thing about it that I think is really important for us to remember. We get the gov's office to give us a green light, and then we bring it to legislators and ask somebody to sponsor it. It's got, at the request of the LCB up there at the top. But once we hand it over to them, we don't control all of it.
Yeah. Can you hear me, David?
Yeah, you're soft.
I was
but go ahead.
going to say also, normally, David, during session, we our ledge person, which is now Mark, would normally be we would come to the board caucus or EMT and keep us abreast on everything and where we are on everything. We understand sometimes during during session, he can't make every board meeting because he's over at doing session, but normally he would come to the board caucus or EMT, and there would be a discussion there of, so all 3 of us are there here at the same time, hearing each other's comments.
So we did talk. I mean, he's been at the last 2 EMTs to leading up to essentially, and then I think the second EMT was on day 3 of the session, maybe, or something. So I think we need to build that into the system now, and I think it's up to us, and then Mark's availability. But if we want that opportunity every week, we can do it at caucus. If we want to do it every other week, we could do it at a board meeting, and we could do it on the merits. We can check with Mark each week to see. But I'm perfectly happy to err on the side of more communication around it.
Me too. And Mark's actually set up some time with me to talk about a couple of things, and I'm assuming he'll do the same with others. The main thing, and you really helped clarify this for me, David, is I just wanted to make sure I'm used to when there's agency request legislation, and this is just to clarify or to make sure I heard what you said correctly, that it's implied that we are in support of that legislation by the time it leaves the LCB and heads up
Oh,
to the legislature.
100%,
And I want people to.
Not just implied, but explicitly, that
Yes.
nothing gets agency request legislation unless a majority of the board endorses that bill. And in my mind, unless somebody says something otherwise, that doesn't mean we support it to get it in the process. We support it because we think that's the right thing that should happen. And that's why
Right.
we fight for our version of that bill.
Okay, and then two, I wanted to make sure that it was not, like, I'm not used to then going in and signing in support of that particular bill because of that very nature of the way in which it leaves here.
No, again, I think it depends. Like, so, Ollie has testified on social equity because she's our lead. The legislature does not want you and I then to also sign in. I mean, you could sign in, but that is performative in a way. No. So yeah, we and sometimes it won't be any of us, right? So, and one of the things I'd like to talk about after we do this is some other bills that have come up. Justin Nordhorn, I think, is going to testify in one of them. If Justin Nordhorn testifies in favor of a bill, it means the board is in support of the bill.
Great.
It means that's something we want to become law. And if not, then we need to have that discussion beforehand. But I've never seen an occasion where staff from the LCB appeared before a committee and said anything other than what reflected the board's position.
Right.
We, the three of us, decide what that is, and then staff represents that. And Ollie, did you want to say? Go ahead.
No, the only thing I wanted to do is go back to make sure, because you just made a statement that we could bring it to a board meeting. I don't think it should be a board meeting. It should be either a board caucus or an EMT.
Okay, we could do the caucus every week or every other week. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I mean,
right. Or an EMT when everyone is there. I mean, I'm just saying, traditionally, the board meeting is for us to hear from others, not go into a round the table discussion normally.
Yeah, that's fine. The only reason I suggested a board meeting is we have such greater attendance of the public at board meetings than board caucuses. If we, sort of the public airing of this, but, my only concern about EMT is that often enough for that kind of conversation? I don't know. Part of my thinking is once the session's going and it's going, you both know as well as I do that not everything is going to wait even a week. Right. It's just not timely. And so what I want us to be able to do is have that relationship with staff where they know, oh, I better call Ollie. I better call Jim. I better talk to everybody, whatever it is, I better come to the caucus and do it because it's going to take different reactions at different times in the process.
Yep. And I'm seeing that already happening, which is great.
Right.
So this has been a really helpful conversation for me, just to make sure I really understood the process and make sure, how it works.
The other thing that, so each of us have now been before a legislative committee already this session on different things. I went and did the work session in the House committee last week. And if we want to be at those committee meetings with staff and present as part of it, we certainly can. And that's another question we should sit down with staff and decide what is the right way to sort of use us and use our time, our part-time here to emphasize things. We're not the experts, but sometimes that's of value too to have leadership there and do that. So I think we can have that conversation as well. I want to say I couldn't be happier with Mark. He's rookie of the year and really sharp.
Totally agree.
But we will get something on the books for a regular update, at least just to make sure we do that. But I think what we want to stress is, and keep up this more timely communication during the session, during the day, whatever it takes. So we're able to stay in touch. Now the social equity bill, this gets not complicated, but so it's going to change. That bill, the sponsors are moving a bill that looks, I don't know what the current status is, but I believe it will look different than what we submitted. Staff is looking at all those pieces that have changed to see what they think. I know they've talked to you, Ollie. I hope they've had thorough conversations with it. But then we have to figure out, okay, what is our posture then? It's still our agency request legislation, but some of those important details may have changed. So how do we communicate that to the legislature? How do we let them know what parts of that we're kind of okay with or not? And and again, that's not a science, but an art of kind of knowing where we need to go and protect our position on that as much as possible. So I was going to talk about some of these other bills, but anything more on this topic of, okay, so I will follow up with Mark and get something on the schedule. We'll do that. So I don't know, did Justin reach out about the medical cannabis tax exemption bill that he suggested that we support, which I think we should. And do you both agree, or have you had a chance to give him feedback?
Yep, I agree, and I gave him feedback. I did have a follow-up question that's somewhat unrelated around the DOH process, but that's separate from that. But yes, I agree with it.
Okay. And so I think he will testify. I think that's great. He can do that. The other one that is working its way through the system, I think they're looking for sponsors now, is the arrest protection bill, again, for medical cannabis users, which I certainly support. And so when we actually see that, I think that's another one that we should talk about, whether we could get on board and support that. We need to do more to help the medical system. And, Jim, to your question, but, other pieces around DOH, Justin and Mary too, Sagawa are doing a lot of work on this now and trying to do some research. And I just met with them yesterday about it. It's something I'm particularly interested in. So I think we definitely need to look for opportunities to do more, work closer with DOH too, probably.
I completely agree. And Justin sent me the links that I asked for, the DOH links this morning. So I'm going to look into it. It's just an area of interest of mine as well. And I completely agree that we need to do better, I think, in regards to supporting the medical patients in cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legislative mandate. Frankly, I don't think it was a mandate that was sort of fully thought out in a way that does it serve the consumer in a way, but it's also, somebody shared with me recently some comments from board members like 5 years ago that sounded a lot like what we just said about how we need to do more. So there's some skepticism and maybe cynicism out there about this, but I really think this is a year where we can make some progress and show that we can support the medical consumer in a way that hopefully helps them. I would hope. And then the other piece was the liquor delivery. So remember we were briefed on that study for, 1480 study about home delivery and whether or not that allowance should expire. The letter I wrote, I guess, on behalf of the agency said we didn't think it should be renewed because of the terrible enforcement problems we're seeing. So my understanding is we're going to oppose the renewal of that. Have you both been briefed on that?
I had questions on that. So we were going to, and I'm talking out loud. So
Yeah.
we were going to oppose the renewal, but I thought I was reading that maybe there's a bill coming forward for that, and we're opposing that too.
Well, let me see if I can find it real quick. There's the renewal would also be a bill. So I don't know if we're talking about two separate things. So there's been some discussion about whether, excuse me, you could set up a separate endorsement or license on that. But let me see real quick.
While you're looking at that, David, I'll say that I haven't had time to completely review that. And one of the things that I'm finding during the legislative session already is that working part-time is going to be a challenge. And so I'm just having to rethink my hours that I work, and I'll probably have to work a little bit more just throughout the session so that I'm still working a 0.6, but I've always tried to keep it where I work the specific days, and I don't know that that's going to work during session because so much comes up.
I can
Yeah,
tell you
and I
right
think-
now, it has not worked, and so, but I just look at it as it is session, and
Yeah,
that's
That's what I'm
it
going to have to
is.
do.
And when we're not in session, we have a lot flexibility on our days. So yesterday was not my day, but I was on this bill mostly all day yesterday, but that's
Yeah.
session, so it's
Right.
gonna happen. But
Yeah,
I'm curious on the other bill,
So-
David.
it is one. So I think we're talking about one bill, and what Mark shared yesterday was that, well, it renews that or puts that in statute and would allow it to continue. It does include some of the things that we've been concerned about. It would create a license for delivery companies and require a bar or restaurant to have a license endorsement for deliveries, and any third-party firms to have a delivery license. So it puts in some oversight and accountability that just doesn't exist today.
Right.
And so I think that's good, but given the enforcement problems we've had, my position at least is that we should not allow that to continue at this point. Now,
And see, I thought when we discussed this and with the enforcement issues, that the compliance wasn't bad. We asked the question and stuff, and it was, we have, and I don't want to call out any particular name, but it was just one delivery thing that was not good. But other than that, I didn't hear about the enforcement issues because I specifically asked that question.
okay, I just pinged Justin to see maybe if he could jump on to talk to us about this. Hate to
And I think he's
surprise-
on.
Oh. Is Justin on?
He's on it, and it was.
Oh,
Yeah.
Justin, is that his hands up? Yeah, let's go ahead and include Justin. I'm sorry. I've been here talking about you for 20 minutes.
There we go. Justin, you should be able to join us now.
Good morning.
Good morning. Chair.
Sorry about that.
Members Wallendroff and Garrett. So the bill that you're referring to is House Bill 1375. That's the home delivery one, and it looks like what they built into the proposal is the licensing requirements that we had called out in the letter. That doesn't mean that we were supportive of that, but at the same time, that's a risk mitigation piece.
So with that being said, and risk mitigation, why are we going flat opposing? And I guess what I'm looking at from a business perspective and things, and with the restaurants and delivery, that like right now you can order food on DoorDash, and you can also still order alcohol from one of the stores, I forgot their names, that's out there that you buy alcohol from. So what we're saying is we're taking that spell from one of our licensee, from a restaurant, but it's not taking away the delivery of alcohol because you can click on something and more. Is that what they're called, the liquor stores or something that sells alcohol?
But
You
does
can
that come
click on-
through DoorDash, Ollie, or does it delivered by the store?
It's come through DoorDash.
It does, huh?
Yeah. So, and I look at from a restaurant point of view and staffing, and I keep going back to staffing, but not just staffing, that things since COVID has changed as far as people and people going out and going back into the restaurants and on and on. I mean, that's the reason the movie theaters are now closing and stuff. People are not coming back out. They are doing more staying home and delivery. And to me, it's a bad thing, but at the same time, it's a good thing because they are now not going out drinking and driving and on because they can sit at home and get their food delivered along with alcohol. So I'm looking at the whole big picture of it.
Yeah, well,
This
I
is
don't.
just me, and I could be missing something here.
No, I don't think you're missing it. I mean, I think, well, one, I don't know if we've seen any drop in driving under the influence since we've allowed delivery. And the 1480 study tried to look for, cause and effects and really couldn't, right, Justin? Is that fair to say?
That's correct. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
not a direct causal link between allowances and
And while we've had, Director Wax was here, but I don't see her right now. We've had particular problems with a third-party delivery service.
Right.
We've seen a number of delivery violations come through the board in the last year. And, I understand this bill sets up a different sort of system maybe that would have helped. But in my mind, it was an allowance given for a particular time, and it didn't work very well. And we allowed it to keep going just because of that, peculiar time we were in. And I don't know, I just sort of I'm just not sure it's a necessity in the world, given the concerns that exist around the difficulty in verifying age and things of that sort.
So when we say it didn't work very well, up until, and like I said, unless I missed something, up until the DoorDash compliance, all I was hearing was it was working. So Justin, did I miss something there? Were there others outside of the one delivery service?
so let me pause for a second and I will try to suggest something. Hey, David, do you have a mute button on that microphone in front of you?
It doesn't
Mute,
help,
we can't
unfortunately.
hear.
We're having problems today,
Yeah.
sorry.
I could see the light. going
Yeah,
on and
it's
off when we're
not this,
talking.
it's something, yeah.
So yes, there were other issues that I saw in the data that was shared at EMT.
Okay.
And so we did see some of the locations doing their own deliveries have some challenges with that particular provision. What the bill before the legislature does right now is it adds the layers of accountability. So you have to have an endorsement to get a third party to deliver for it, or to deliver at all. The third party has to have an endorsement to work with the third party has to have a license in order to work with somebody with an endorsement. And then you also have the drivers have mandatory training. And so there are three components to this particular bill. What I should also highlight from internal staff discussions around any type of new license, and including this is just one of many that are proposed, is the implementation of these are going to be fairly costly because of the SMP project, and it's going to be very difficult to code something in our current system when we're trying to switch over to another system. And that's not the reason to necessarily make a decision. However,
Right.
I think it's important to recognize some of those cost implications when people see the fiscal notes that are coming with these.
Yeah. my mindset, and as I share with license and stuff when we're looking at these things, is to say, instead of our first reaction to things, because it's not what we've always done or haven't done, is before we go no, to see if there's a way to get to a yes. And when I say to get to a yes, by having certain things, looking at every element to say, if this was in place, if this was in place, if this was in place, we could get to a yes. And it's not to say that folks will be able to put all of those things in place. We went through this with the axe throwing thing. Rather than a flat no, how do we get to a yes? By coming up with procedures and requirements to make it a yes. And I just didn't want us to overlook, did we see an opportunity, if this benefit the businesses and things with everything that they are going through, if this is going to help them with sales or whatever those things are coming out of COVID, is it a way that we could get to a yes? And I'm not saying that it is. And one of the conversations I've been having with folks, and this is to do with just businesses and what's happening, is a lot of the stuff that we did because of COVID, it worked and it helped folks sustain and survive. But one of the things that hasn't been factored in is, now that we are out of COVID, it doesn't mean that there isn't, these businesses doesn't need time to now get back to norm. So I was talking to folks about PPPs, and people get PPP loans and everything to sustain. But at the same time, it helped them sustain. But what we didn't factor in is, do they need even more now to get back up and going, and waiting for society to get back to coming back out, coming back into the stores, shopping, going back to the movie theaters, that there's, just because COVID has ended, it doesn't mean the consequences of what folks went through because of COVID has just instantly ended.
Yeah, I get that. I look at it a little differently in a couple of ways. One,
Okay.
I looked at the allowances, which started before I got here, but in my old job, we had a piece of that responsibility as well, as ways to reduce people's exposure to the virus. How do we just sort of allow people to live his life as much as normal as possible? So we had lots of different things we allowed, not as economic boost to businesses that might be struggling, especially because these businesses, restaurants were struggling, but alcohol sales didn't suffer, nor did cannabis sales. But we had those allowances in place really as a public health measure, not as an economic development measure. And now it is sort of morphing into that other thing, which is we need this help to get ourselves back on our feet. And I do agree with you in that general, and you and I, have had that conversation, but about trying to get to yes. And where it gets more complicated, though, is where yes increases availability of one of the products that we regulate. We're not talking about sort of fixing a problem that licensees come to us and say, well, why are you doing this thing, to some existing thing, or a change that in some regulation that just doesn't work once it hits the ground. Like, how do we fix these things? But we're faced with questions every day that are about expanding access to alcohol and cannabis. And we do a lot of it, frankly, but I don't think we always have to. I think we can, and we don't always have to in the time frame that some people want it as well. I think, sometimes we do just go, you're doing great. There's a lot going on. Because there are people out there that don't want us to allow alcohol delivery.
Right.
And so how do we address those concerns as well? Jim?
Yeah,
go
and
ahead.
I just can I just jump in here real quick because I have to do a little bit more research on this one, but I am not inclined to continue to allow this temporary provision to continue, and for multiple reasons. One is nationally, when I went to the national alcohol regulators, I heard this was a problem all over the country. So this is not just unique to Washington State. I also, I want businesses to thrive, but I too thought this was about minimizing contact between people because of the transmission of virus. And then thirdly, I think that as I understand it, there are certain locations in Washington State where there are a higher percentage of licensees who are taking advantage of this opportunity, but it's not happening all over the state. So anyway, I've got to do a little bit more research, but I'm not inclined at this particular point to support continuing this temporary allowance.
Right. And I agree. It started out as health and thing, and that what happened by us allowing it is when the licensees got to see the benefit of that when it was allowed, and the benefit that became more about economics than the health. So I see that. I just, does this stop the from being able to wine and more, I think it's called, and on and on. All of those type of companies are on DoorDash. So does this
I don't
stop
know.
that?
Justin, do you
Or
know?
does it just affect the, and I'm just looking at it from the restaurants and stuff, delivery type things with and getting alcohol, but does it stop the wine and mores and all of the others?
So
we
we
sunset
have a,
the-
yeah, so we have a rule set right now that prescribes home delivery from the grocery stores. So the allowance that was afforded was expanding the privileges of the restaurants to engage in a similar manner as they were having a difficult time being open, and then the public health implications. I think if the bill is not successful moving forward, that does not change anything with our rule that's currently in place. So therefore, those grocery stores wouldn't necessarily be discontinuing that approach.
They were what?
So I don't think that the grocery stores or specialty shops would have to discontinue their approach, as we have a rule set prescribing those things. It just wouldn't allow the restaurants and the
Right.
breweries and such to do it.
Because
Right.
that predates COVID, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Right,
This is
and that
restaurants only.
will continue.
And that's what I'm saying. It's not taking away the delivery of alcohol. It's just taking away easier access. And I won't say easier, a different access, because you can still order food, and then within 10 minutes they list all of the other deliveries of alcohol for you to click on, wine and more, this, that, whatever, where you can still order alcohol. We're just taking it away from the restaurants. Is that correct? Am I saying that right?
Well, I'm trying to look at the bill real quick, but go ahead, Justin, if you can shed some light on it.
Yeah, so if this particular provision expires and the legislature doesn't do anything, those allowances for the on-premise locations to be able to facilitate those delivery sales would cease.
Right.
But the other licenses, such as the grocery store that had those privileges prior to COVID, would not cease.
Grocery stores and specialties, the wine and mores, the whatever, all of those
I believe
other
the specialty
alcohols.
shops were in that as well.
But it
Right,
does
exactly.
say, so reading the bill, this subsection does not authorize sale of full bottles of spirits by licensees for off-premises consumption, with the exception of mini bottles as part of cocktail kits. Mini bottle sales authorized. Wait, I found something there I want to share with you. So I think that you wouldn't be able to get, if this bill doesn't pass, and they stopped that allowance, you wouldn't be able to get mixed cocktails delivered to your house.
That's correct.
I think
Right.
that's the real difference. You wouldn't be able to get single serving type alcohol things. You could still order from Safeway, whatever you could order from Safeway or Wine and More and those things. So you can still be able to take out your growlers, because that again is a thing that existed before COVID.
But now in the convenience store, there you can buy the margaritas already made.
In a
They
can,
have, pardon me?
in a can.
I don't know if it's in a can. I haven't bought the pre-made, but I see them in the grocery store, and it's not just can, because like in Costco, they got the big thing of it's already mixed margaritas containers in the glass, whatever, and stuff. It's already, and I don't know if margaritas is the only one. I just know I've seen where those you can buy already pre-mixed in the grocery stores and the specialty stores. I don't know if there are other pre-mixed stuff out there. Justin, do you know?
Yeah, I would probably have to look at that, but I think one of the things I would highlight in this bill is the impact to home delivery will not be solely for those restaurants, because there's a new section that was drafted that basically creates the endorsement. So this would mean that the third-party delivery would need to have a license even to do it for grocery stores.
Great. Did something
Yeah.
stop?
I shouldn't be reading this on the fly, but I think we should find a time to go through this in more detail then.
And I think that's all I'm saying is that we have really looked at the whole thing, and we still can end up with a no. I just think that it shouldn't just be an automatic no.
No, and I don't think it's automatic. I mean, part of it was what, and my own opinion changed as we saw more about the enforcement information. There's other allowances that came in with COVID that I don't think do the same kind of increase in the availability of alcohol in the same way. Outdoor dining, which has been a big thing, we've heard from one local government urging us to continue that piece. I don't object to that from what I know today, so I think there's some things that happened, to your point, Ollie, about, we did these allowances and then they kind of worked. You're right. Some of these things were things we long prohibited. Then it turned out, well, they work and they're not a problem, both on the cannabis side and some argue on the cannabis side and some argue on the alcohol side. And we should look at those things.
Right.
Let's go ahead.
And I'm looking now. You can get at Wine and More margaritas, Long Island iced teas, Smirnoff ice screwdrivers, Malibu cocktails, lemongrass, lime, and vodka. Pardon me?
But can you get one of those cans delivered to your house?
Well, these are not all cans.
Or one of those containers, whatever they are, bottles, cans?
I don't know. I haven't tried it.
I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
In my mind, the difference is I'm ordering my hamburger from the place downtown and they're sending me 2 pre-mixed, margaritas in plastic cups, with tops on them.
That's the difference.
Or I'm ordering from Safeway, which is a 6-pack of beer or a bottle of wine or a 6-pack of pre-made. Now, it's not a perfect distinction, I understand, but there's something there that we didn't do for a long time and everybody was okay. We did it for a short time. It posed some problems. And I think for me, it's just that question of, well, does this make it more likely alcohol gets in the hands of people who shouldn't have it? Our evidence right now is yes.
Yeah, and the enforcement piece is a part that I would want to have some more serious conversation about. Do we have the enforcement staff to really do this, and do we have the resources to do this? Because it seems like I have heard that it's more expensive for us to do the enforcement of, and we already have challenges from my perspective, given the vacancy rate of enforcement, to do all of the work that enforcement needs to do. And I'm not convinced that the time is right to extend this.
I think that's right. It is more expensive, there's no doubt. It's hard. And one of the reasons why, Ollie, I think there was almost this delay before anybody started talking about this delivery as a problem was that, remember, during the heat of the pandemic, we weren't doing compliance checks because of the health risks of sending minors into facilities and doing those things. So it's only fairly recently that we've even built up that infrastructure to be able to do these delivery compliance checks, which are much more staff dependent than, you know, a buy in a store, which,
Right.
but even that, a buy in a store is usually, you know, two or three people, I think. So, but we can answer all these questions and
Yeah,
get more details.
I just think it's great to have a discussion around it. So,
No, I'm really glad for the discussion.
Yeah,
And,
I agree.
You know, and when we looked at that 1480 study, it didn't give us an answer one way or the other, because it's hard to know where's the cause and effect.
right.
And it was frankly not coincidence, but not part of that study that the enforcement actions sort of happened right as we were finishing that report and writing our letter to the governor and the legislature about what those findings were. And my feeling was it just seemed off to just send that report saying, well, it doesn't really draw any conclusions without adding, however, the work we're doing internally is setting off some waving some red flags. Justin, thoughts on where we're at?
Yeah, I would agree that there are definitely red flags that are out there. I think that the bill, kind of looking at both sides of this particular debate, I think that the bill does do some stuff to address some of that risk mitigation. We have heard that some of those that had the lowest compliance have started improving. I have not seen the data to necessarily back that up, but I wouldn't be surprised if changes were made by these companies. And I think having a license can certainly mitigate some of that. And re-looking at the bill as we were talking, I pulled it up, and I do think that if it were to move forward, there should be some tweaks to it because it'll bifurcate the industry in a manner of speaking. So that section 3 looks like you would have to have a endorsement or a license for the third-party delivery to only do the deliveries for the restaurants. So if that moves forward as is, then the restaurants would get an endorsement. The third party would have a license to contract with them. However, they wouldn't need the license to support the grocery stores. That part looks like it was not included because they're doing it not by a general policy approach, but by a license type approach.
Yeah. I didn't pick that up when it says there's an alcohol delivery license to deliver spirits, beer, and wine from a business licensed by the board with an endorsement for alcohol delivery. You're saying that's just that'd be restaurant bars as opposed to grocery store?
Well, if the grocery stores, the way that this bill is written, it does not look like the grocery stores would be mandated to get a endorsement. So then the question becomes, could they do that for the grocery stores who already have this privilege that they can do this without an endorsement and without a license? So I think that it does create a little bit of confusion in that area.
So Justin, if the delivery company has to get a license, that means they fall under the same criteria of getting AVNs and on and could lose their license after 3 on and on like everyone else, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And they don't have that hanging over their head today, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the responsibility is all on the liquor license business at this point.
The only thing I'd say is if this bill is going to move, I also don't know why people are ready to make it permanent, given that we have concerns at this point about performance. And I'm glad that they're improving their systems, and I believe they are. But maybe we need to see that in play for a period of time before we, embed this permanently in state statute, giving them this right. But,
Well, and I would want to hear a little bit more from the community. I mean, I think that there are reports that talk about that even a little bit of alcohol can be harmful to your health. And we already make alcohol very widely accessible, and you can purchase it in a lot more places than you used to be able to. And I just don't know that it's our role to make it even more accessible.
That's right.
And anecdotally, I have heard from people in the recovery community who have relapsed as a result of being able to just call and have alcohol delivered to their home, whereas they may not have done that. Would they have to go outside and do that? So anyway, I just think we need to hear from more people about this one.
I agree. Okay. Yeah, I don't know exactly. We'll have to figure out how to make that happen. Let's have another discussion about this. Maybe we'll give Justin more than 30 seconds notice to come and talk to us about this, and we can ask Mary Sagawa too to come, and we need to hear from the public health perspective, because I know I've heard from them that this is a major concern among the practitioners and advocates.
Have we done kind of like what Kathy does when she brings both sides together?
Not on this in terms of like a listen and learn or something.
Yeah,
of that
listen and
sort.
learn, right?
No,
Yeah.
and because this, we don't, we haven't.
Okay.
And, I mean, again, I'm glad that this bill looks at a licensing thing and doesn't just renew it forever. That gives us some avenue in there. Okay, well, we're gonna have to revisit it, but appreciate it. Okay. Thanks, Justin, appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you,
Anything
Justin.
more from board members, thoughts, things we need to follow up on? I'll follow up with Mark, but I think we're in good shape there.
No, I do appreciate the conversation. I think these are important conversations for us to have, and this is the place where we get to have these kind of conversations.
That's right.
So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. I want to thank you both for that, because, as we always say, we don't get to sit and talk like this unless we're out in public, and I think this just shows we can have these conversations out in public. Nobody gets hurt. So we should just do this more often and air stuff out. And it also is a chance for the three of us to hear from staff, at the same time and all of that. So I'm really glad for the time, and I'm sure we'll have other things on our mind too. So, okay, so tomorrow we have a board meeting, making up for last week's when we had to continue it for technical issues. We hope we'll have our sound even problems ironed out, but we'll have a backup system available too. And I am confident we will be able to do that and get through tomorrow's business as well. So anything else, Dustin?
Not for me, thanks, Chair.
Okay, great. Okay, with that, we'll adjourn the board caucus for January 24th, 2023, and we'll see you at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bye, everybody.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
You guys have a good day.
You too.